Welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers and agencies learn from other marketers across other industries. Today, we're talking with Melissa Cervin, the Vice President of Marketing at Lombardo Companies, based in Shelby Township, Michigan. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us today. How have you been?
Thanks for having me. I've been good. It's been busy, which is a good thing to say right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you making the time today, and I've got a small handful of questions for you. But I thought before we jumped into those, was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about Lombardo and what you do for the organization. I'd like our audience to know what kind of company it is and what you do for them.
Okay, absolutely. Lombardo Companies is actually a home builder. We have several different divisions within Lombardo Companies. There's Lombardo Homes that has divisions in Michigan, one division in Michigan and two in Missouri, where we build production and custom homes. We also in Michigan have our luxury custom homes, so fully custom. You can start with a drawing. You can start with one of our plans, or we will draw a home for you. And then we also have our on your lot divisions in both Missouri and Michigan. And then we have property management as well, apartments that we do here in Michigan. And we're getting ready to open our property management division in Missouri. So
Okay. And your job, your responsibilities as Vice President of Marketing involve what for the company?
Um, everything. So I often joke that marketing becomes the junk drawer of the company. If you don't quite
Right.
know where it fits, give it to marketing and they'll figure it out. But um, I handle, basically everything that is marketing, both internal and external marketing. So it's digital advertising, which is probably our biggest component at this point. It's the most significant part of my budget. Website, social media, and then all of the more traditional marketing as well. So if we are doing the norm, the things that we did in the past that were so common, billboards, print, TV, radio, all of
Okay.
those things as well. So.
Okay. That's cool. Do you have a team of people that you work with in the marketing department?
I do. I have three individuals that are stationed here in Michigan, which is also where I live. I do travel back and forth between Michigan and Missouri, and then I have another person who works with me. She lives full time in Missouri to be
Okay.
that support in our Missouri divisions.
Okay. Okay. Great. So I'm curious. You've spent, your entire 20 plus year career working in the home building space. I'm just curious. What about the industry, has kept you in it over these years?
That's a great question because this is not what I intended to do. I was supposed to be a school teacher. That was what I was going to do. And I got a job when I was in college working as a temp, working for a local home builder here in Michigan, and really loved the job. It turned into a full-time job where I worked full-time during the day and went to school at night. Um, and then just ended up changing my major so that it could support me staying in this field. I think part of what I like about it is just marketing in general. It would apply to any industry. When you
Sure.
are in marketing, that job is a little bit different every single day. A lot of the facets of it are the same over time, but every community opening is different, or every promotion or campaign is a little bit different. So I can't say that day to day anything's the same, and I like that.
Hmm.
But home building in and of itself, there's a level of emotion involved in it. It's
Right.
it's the most expensive purchase that almost everyone is ever going to make. It's
Hmm.
also one of the most emotional experiences or purchases and experiences that anyone's going to have. So. Understanding sort of the emotion behind buying a new home and how to understand that emotion and then translate it into advertising that helps it helps our buyers connect with us, but also helps us basically explain to them that we understand how emotional it is. I mean, buying a home is scary and stressful, and those are all things that I'm not supposed to say in marketing because
Sure.
that doesn't help. But finding ways to almost reassure customers and encourage them to come in and tap into those emotions so they do visit us and go through the
Yeah.
process. It's more emotional than one would think, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. I enjoy the the longevity of each. Is longevity the right word? I enjoy being able to get to know customers and have them go through our process, and having someone be really excited about buying a new home and maybe a little, maybe even a little tentative to, at the end of it, closing on their new home and being, one of our biggest fans and referring
Yeah.
their friends and family. So, and I enjoy the challenges even. I mean, sometimes we make mistakes and we have to work our way through that. And sometimes we make mistakes very publicly and it plays out on social media. And
Sure.
those are interesting challenges too. How to talk to a customer, how to reassure them, how to right wrongs that we've made in a public forum. So it's always changing, and I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I've got a couple of questions that kind of spin off what you just talked about. Uh, I would imagine it's kind of tough for consumers to differentiate between one builder from the next. Would you agree with that or not?
I would. I think it's important that builders really understand who they are in a market and what their, unique selling position is. And I feel very confident and very lucky that we do have, stuff that differentiates us very early on. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can look at one of our communities, and right across the street, you can have a competitor's community, and you can compare it apples to apples. So there's things that you have to do as a builder that differentiate you, because your product can be very similar and it can be priced
Right.
similar. So you have to be able to explain to the customer or show the customer what makes your experience different.
Right. What do builders most often use as their claimed points of difference? Would you say?
Oh, I don't think there's any one thing. I think every
Yeah.
builder is a little bit different. Some
Yeah.
builders, we like to stay away from this. We don't ever want to talk negatively about other builders or what they offer. But some builders do that. Um, a lot of builders will use incentives, and that's their way of differentiating. We aren't really we try to stay away from incentives because we feel like at the end of the day it doesn't do a service to our product. I think
Sure.
whenever you can start right off the bat with your product and discounting it, then you're actually, I think the consumers can see through that really quickly, and you're devaluing your own product. So we try to stay away from that. But I mean, incentivizing is a really big thing in
Sure.
general for builders
In
to
the
use
industry,
to
yeah.
draw the.
What do you, as you think back over the last 20 years, what would you say some of the biggest changes in the industry have been?
In regards to the customer, or in regards to
Well,
marketing for a home builder.
whatever,
Okay.
all of the above.
So I have to say technology is probably the biggest difference in how someone bought a home 20 years ago versus how someone buys a home today. And
Sure.
I would even say that, on my end, from a marketing standpoint, that is also a really big difference. I'm sorry, a really big difference. So I've joked around with people because I have done this for a really long time. When I first started doing this, I had a budget where a significant part of it was, 3/4 of it was tied up in my newspaper advertising. That is where I spent the vast majority of my budget. And I remember my DP coming in every weekend or every Monday with the Sunday paper, and it would be like,
Nice.
why is this builder on this page and we're on page 3, or why is this builder here? And it was like that constant play for page 2 in the paper, and how much would you spend and how could you get there? And looking back now, I do very little print advertising, if any.
Sure.
If I do, it's in niche markets and in sort of niche papers, if you will. So I don't do much of that, and the vast majority of my budget is spent on digital advertising.
Sure.
So it's stuff with our website, SEO, PPC, all of that. Because realistically, 98% of all buyers find you online before they ever make a decision to drive out or walk into one of my sales offices. So
Okay.
in
Yeah.
that regard, thinking about how I budgeted and where I was marketing 20 years ago versus what I'm doing now, it's vastly different.
Totally different.
Um,
Yeah.
with that too, I mean, it's different for the customer. I mean, now customers, I mean, think about how we live our lives. We buy so much of our lives online. You know,
Right.
you can shop for clothing on Amazon, you can shop for food on Instacart, you can buy your car online. So we're very conditioned to being able to buy anything and everything online, and the home building space is transitioning to that too. Now, our industry specifically and historically is very resistant to change. It's a very traditional industry. We're
Okay.
usually the last to kind of come along to some of these, you know, new inventions, if you will. So, I've been lucky enough in the last several years to work for a builder who really does embrace, you know, technology. So we've had the ability, a customer's sort of biggest frustration with us, one of them is when you build a house, and in this case, I mean, these customers are spending anywhere between 300,000 to over a couple million,
Hmm.
and they're not able to visualize their home. I mean, they're still going to a design studio and picking brick for a, you know, 3,000 square foot home off of a sample that's, you know, like this big, and their siding sample is that big, and but you've got to picture this whole big
Right.
house. So we've recently introduced our interactive design tool where
Oh,
people can go
nice.
on and select their plan and select their options. And then they can actually pick their colors, their exterior colors. And we only have a kitchen for the interior design right now, but they can put their interior colors in too. So they can see their cabinets with their countertops and their paint color and their hardwood. Because that in our reviews is sort of one of the biggest pieces of feedback is I can build my car online and see exactly what it looks like. Why can't I see my house? And
Yeah.
that's the direction we're going in.
Has the industry moved in that direction pretty much, or
It is moving in that
okay,
direction. It is
okay,
moving in that direction. So it, it's a double-edged sword, right? In that this technology, it's absolutely what our customer expects, and our customers
right,
are going to continue to demand it. So realistically, builders are going to have to move in that direction. Not all builders have necessarily seen that yet,
okay.
um, and the ones that have, you know, doing some of these things, it's not inexpensive. I mean, there needs to be a budget there to invest in these
I'm sure.
tools, and you know, we've just come off a very hot market. So it's really hard, you know, and we're still in an industry where not all senior leadership will do this, but you know, we still work in an industry where when times are good or when times start getting tough, there are still conversations about cutting marketing. You know, well,
Yeah,
we need to save some money. You know, we're going to close less homes, we're going to sell less homes, we're going to close less homes. So let's cut marketing,
yeah,
which
yeah,
being in that world, we know that that's not the right answer, but
yeah.
you still combat that a lot. So builders are coming along, but I actually just got back from the International Builders Show, and
Right.
actually had the opportunity to be a part of a presentation where we talked about these kinds of things, and it was very interesting in the
Yeah.
question and answer session afterwards, just to see that there is still some resistance to the idea
Yeah.
of providing this information and adopting these
What
tools.
what is the coming off of that show? What's the general sentiment about home building and remodeling and the economy in general?
So actually, it was really great to go. That event was at the end of January, beginning of February, and I think a lot of builders experienced much of what we did, where at the end, you know, when mortgage rates went up or interest rates went up in June, things got really quiet. In June through December, we're a lot quieter than we've been accustomed to over the last several years. So I think there was a lot of doom and gloom in the media, maybe a little bit of doom and gloom internally, you know,
Sure.
because of the drastic change and everything that we were hearing. Um, there was a big difference in January. Traffic has picked up a lot. Not, I mean, yes, for Lombardo homes, Lombardo companies overall, but for all the builders. So as a general consensus, it was really great to go to IBS, and everyone was sort of talking about that, about how the market is sort of, you know, turned again, and there is a lot of optimism. You know, we're seeing people come back in the doors. I think people have had a little bit of time to adjust to the rate change.
Right.
And the media has also done a little bit of a turnabout, where when all of this first started happening, there was a lot of doom and gloom, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
conversation about how much more money everything costs now with increased interest rates. And now there's been less doom and gloom and more talk of how the industry is just normalizing, which
Yeah,
is
I
really
would,
what it's doing in a much more realistic conversation.
yeah, yeah, I would imagine that the way the market is today is pretty normal, and the way it was, in the last
Yeah.
2 years is completely abnormal. So, we got
Right.
we got used to the craziness, and suddenly things slowed down, but they really didn't slow down, at a pace that was below what it was pre-pandemic, say. So,
You're exactly right, Mark. It was actually interesting to, I've been reading so much over the last several months, just trying to combat some of the negativity out there. And one of the things I read was, we get in this habit of always comparing everything year over year, year over year. Well, if you
sure,
compare, the end of 2022 to the end of 2021, those numbers,
yeah,
they take your breath away.
yeah,
That is a little scary. But
yeah,
2021 wasn't a normal year, neither was 2020. So if we
yeah,
back ourselves up all the way and compare the end of 2022 to the end of 2019, we weren't. I mean, I think the study that I had read showed that we were down like 1% or
yeah,
3%. It was a very normal, healthy, not scary number.
right,
And
right,
really 2019 was the last normal, truly normal
yep,
year we had.
yep,
2020 through 2022 were very abnormal years, but we forget that, right? And we're just looking
right,
for year over year comparisons.
yep, absolutely. So I noticed in your LinkedIn profile summary, you mentioned about keeping the companies you've worked for on the cutting edge of the industry. And I'm curious, how do you identify cutting edge ideas and offerings? Are there things that you do as a marketer, as just a general business professional to try and keep yourself ahead of the curve and make sure that you're doing everything you can that's, as productive and sort of forward looking as possible?
I do. I am, my division president teases me a lot because he says every time he gets out on LinkedIn, he sees me out there. So I am, I have an incredible network of people, and there are so many people that I know or am connected to that are doing that exact same thing, where they're always kind of going to the next step, before everyone else is. So I can't say that we're always doing it before, but we're right there with people understanding what's coming next, understanding sort of the changes in consumer sentiment, how they're buying, what they're looking for, and how we can meet them there.
Okay.
We also, we do focus groups to understand, and we've done them for various reasons. I'm getting ready to set up some to do now to, go over our product and understand if our product is changing. Is it still livable the way people are living? Because the
Okay.
way we live just changed pretty dramatically, through COVID, and even with, yes, there's this sort of quote unquote return to work initiative going on, but return to work is still, most people are still doing some hybrid
Yes. Yeah.
form of working, and that doesn't seem like it's going to be going away. But that was a big change, especially in home building, because all of a sudden, if you think about it, we
Changes the
all
game. Yeah.
all of a sudden at some point, I mean, here in Michigan, we shut down for 6 weeks, where we had the governor and businesses and schools were all shut down, and all of a sudden you had 2 kids, 2 dogs, and 2 spouses living in a house. Now, does everyone fit? Yep.
Yeah.
Is there really working spaces for kids, 2 different kids, or two or more, or one, or whatever,
Right.
kids to be working remotely, and then mom and dad working remotely? And that's not how our homes are designed. I mean, there was
Right.
always a pretty strong, differentiation between work and home.
So, so do you find that you're promoting your offering differently because of that?
Yes, and I find that we're designing our offering
Okay.
differently because of that.
Okay.
So, but I
Interesting.
mean, yeah, even in the very beginning, one of the reasons that, stuff like the interactive design tool I mentioned was so important is just because people really struggle in new home building to visualize their
Mhm.
space. I think I read a statistic recently that, 35% of all people start out when they look for a home, they want to build a new home, but home builders only really capture 10 to 15% of that market. And it's because in resale, you can see exactly what you're getting, but people struggle with really seeing what's going into their home. So, right now we're going through the efforts of actually redesigning plans and making sure that we have offerings, multiple workspaces, flex rooms, and so on and so forth. But one of the initial things we did was just kind of changing how you label things in your marketing. Because if people look at a floor plan on a piece of paper and see, okay, this is the dining room, this is the great room, this is the kitchen, as silly as it sounds, they can't change it to say, well, the dining room doesn't have to be the dining room. The dining room can actually be a craft space or a workspace or whatever else. Like, but if you change it and just say flex room, like it can be a living room, it can be a dining room, it can be a workspace. So, those are some of the things that we did just initially to kind of help with that. This house, it doesn't. I mean, think about it. We still offer dining rooms, but how many people do you know that still have a formal dining room that's fairly antiquated?
I spent the pandemic working in our dining room. So
Yeah, there you go. The flex room.
there you go. I'm curious to how do they play a role, architects and designers, in trying to keep yourself sort of ahead of the curve as it relates to sort of design and new ideas and things like that. Do you tap into that group at all?
Well, we're lucky to have designers on staff.
Okay, got it.
So, with that, and then, our Anthony Lombardo, who is the owner of Lombardo Companies,
Mhm.
is, I guess, would we give him an honorary designer? Although if he designed stuff, we would have just lots of walk-in closets and everything because he's a big closet person. But yeah, no, it's listening and understanding that what they have to offer. One of our designers who handles our custom homes division, where we're doing $1 million homes and above, he has worked almost everywhere. I mean, he's spent time in Europe, he's spent
Got
time in multiple states here. He knows sort of where the trends start and he knows where the trends go to die. And
it.
so he's always coming to us, and he's the one that will draw from scratch for a custom home buyer, but he also does a review of the plans that we're putting that the other divisions are putting out, and will make suggestions and tweaks, and based on the things that he's seen
That's great.
and that.
So, just changing the subject a bit, I'm curious, have you ever worked with marketing agencies? And
Yeah. Yeah.
if so, what kinds, and what have they done to help service Lombardo?
So I have worked with agencies, and in a couple of facets. One of them is my current agency that I work with. They're out of Chicago, and they've been fantastic for us. But the biggest thing that I have them do all year round, every year, is they do handle the digital aspect for us. The SEO and PPC is just I've done this long enough that, believe it or not, Google wasn't a thing yet when I started doing this, which makes me sound ancient, but it wasn't. And then when Google did become a thing, I kind of thought it was this like thing that was going to go away someday. I thought it was a fad, because it was so new. So I managed that myself in the very, very beginning. And
Sure.
then once Google became Google, algorithms and all of the changes, and I couldn't keep up if I had to. So I have an agency that, they handle all of that for me, and they've done a phenomenal job of
That's
making sure
great.
we're where we're at when we need to be. I can't say enough fabulous things. They've also done, some really creative campaigns that I wasn't even aware of until I started working with them. So,
Hmm.
quarterly we do these little campaigns, sort of, we go out and poll people. It might be something silly like, what is the most popular Christmas decoration by region? So we go out and pull people by region. We bring all those details together. We basically release the information. Well, on the backside, the pro to us is anyone who picks up that information, we get those links back to our website.
Right. Right.
And then we're providing this information out there for the market. So we have been on the morning. No, I'm sorry. Good Morning America. Is that what it is?
Hmm.
Going to
Yeah.
get them mixed up. But we've had our stuff featured on Good Morning America. We've had some of our stuff featured on the Jimmy Fallon show late
No, that's
night.
fantastic.
So they've done some really cool, fun things in order to get additional traffic and or links, back to back
Do
to
you
our website.
do you have a PR firm that you work with that helps you get those placements?
So I'm doing everything through one agency. So they're
Okay,
going
so
to
they
run
manage all that. That's
they manage
great.
all
That's
that for
great.
us.
Do
Yes.
you manage some of the marketing work in-house as well?
So we do the vast majority of our marketing in-house. I
Okay.
will reach out and have the agency, like we just did a rebrand of Lombardo Homes. We've had
Okay.
this, or of Lombardo Companies, I should say. We have had the same logo and same colors since 1962, I believe it is.
Okay.
So, burgundy and gray was our color, and our logo hasn't changed. So we just in January released or rolled out a new logo for all of our different divisions
Okay.
and brands, new colors. I'm in the process because it's long of redoing all of our signage. We had to redo all of our marketing, redo our website. So when it came to the rebranding, that's a huge task and beyond me. So I went to the agency for that, and we probably took longer than we needed to, and that would have been on my end. There's lots of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to something like a
I'm sure.
rebrand. And when you're changing a logo, especially, I think there was a little hesitance on our part because we're not
Been
Google.
part of you for so long.
Well, and it's we Lombardo Companies is still run by four Lombardo siblings. They're still here and in the office every single day. So I think there's a hesitance to like actually touch what has worked for so long and make
Sure.
it different. And
Yeah.
thankfully, again, Anthony Lombardo was very forward thinking. And the first couple of go rounds, we had stuff that was similar but different, but it wasn't drastically different. And
Okay.
he finally said, "Blow it up. I want none of this.
Wow, that's great.
What would
You-
you do differently?" And our look and feel is very, very different than what it
yeah.
was before. But I definitely worked with an agency for all of that.
Yeah. So, what would you say if you had to define sort of the advantages and disadvantages of using an agency? Like, why would you turn outside for an agency? What sort of advantages might it provide? And maybe you can speak to that first.
I can. So I think working with an agency, the agency as an entity and everyone who's in it um, has just such a wealth of creativity beyond what myself and my team do. I mean, first of all, again, there are so many pros to having done this for a long time, but at some point, one of the cons is, I have a box, and sometimes it's really hard to get out of that box. Like I know
Right.
it works, I know what we've done in the past, and can I think outside of the box? I can, but it's challenging because
Yeah.
I've done this for so long and I know what works. I know if we do this, then this. And so sometimes it gets hard to get out of that box and see
Sure.
things differently. So when you bring in an agency, they're not, there isn't a box. They're just kind of like, you're
Yeah.
talking. And as you're talking, they're having these fireworks of ideas go off and they take it and put it to paper and you look at what they come back with and you have all of these ideas in front of you and they're all drastically different. And I know at the agency I'm working with currently, they set some stuff down in front of me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I feel like they just tapped right into my brain and sucked all of my thoughts and emotion out, and they spit it onto paper, and it was beautiful. And I mean, they did such a good job listening and hearing me, and there it was. But it was done in such a way that I never would have considered doing it. And it was perfect. It was like, yes, this is it. This is exactly what we need to do. So
That's awesome.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
having that because you know I get stuck in that world of like everything kind of looks the same or it's different but it's not drastically different, or am I conveying the emotion that I want to? And they do a phenomenal job at that. So just having that creativity, having access to some of the tools that they do that we don't use, like they definitely have different tools, but
Talking
realistically.
like from a technology standpoint.
Mhm. Yep. Um, One of the, as far as the cons, one of the things that I struggle with is, at the end of the day, I am a regional Midwest builder. I'm wildly proud of what I do with the budget that I have,
Yeah.
but my budget is it's not hefty. So the hardest part of working with an agency, especially when I have a team that does so much in house, like I can design a flyer in house. It costs me, my marketing coordinator's time,
Sure.
which I'm paying for anyway. Or I can have my agency create a flyer and, the cost
And
is,
the cost. Yeah.
yeah. And the cost is just kind of one of those things that makes me go, ooh, like, because that's not what I pay for every single day, and
Yeah,
it's not how my budget is set up. So
yeah,
that's part of why I don't work with agencies all of the time.
sure.
I can say that I think that there are a lot of parts of my job that would be significantly easier if I could have an agency do this
Do
and do
more of
that.
it. Yeah,
And we do a lot more on our own than we do with an
yeah,
agency, just because I don't have the budget to support
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But there's, like I said, that limits me too, though. Like creatively, the stuff that an agency puts out, and when I have my bigger promotions, I still go to the agency and say, okay, I'm going to pay for this. I'll
yeah,
have them, I will have the agency do sort of the root thing. I get the big idea, and then
yeah.
we'll take it and do all of the supporting
The
pieces.
executional stuff. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
So, if you were talking to another marketer that was thinking about bringing a new agency on board, any advice you'd give to that marketer?
Um, I would say, and having gone through this, I mean, I switched agencies here in the last 3 or 4 years, so I have been with them for a while now. But
Okay,
um, it needs to be a good fit. It really does. So I would say take your time finding an agency, even
okay,
if you're under the gun. The fallout from finding and working with an agency that isn't the right fit for your company is worse than taking a little extra time to find one that's a really good fit. And I think you're going to know when it's a good fit because you're going to have that sort of aha moment where you can just talk to them and they're going to kind of provide you with a few things. Or even the agency that I'm working with currently, just in conversation, I knew that there was just a synergy between us just based on conversation. They were hearing me, and then they were kind of playing out ideas just in conversation.
that's great.
Um, but I think in order to work with an agency too, it's important that you understand who you are as a company. I think that an agency can help you identify that, but you have to be open to it. If you don't, am I saying this right?
Yeah, no,
A
that
lot
makes
of
a lot of
companies
sense.
don't necessarily know who they are, and agencies can help you sort of identify who you are, what you stand for, what your values and morals are, but you have to be open to them helping you through that process
Right.
too. If you don't know who you are, the agency can't figure you out, and they're not going to be able to give you what you're looking for. So that's an important component. Like
Yeah. No,
I think overall
that,
people can get frustrated with an agency, and it's not always in the hands of the agency. It's
yeah.
because a lot of
No,
times.
that's great advice. Definitely, sometimes marketers kind of rush into the selection of an agency because they're under the gun or whatever it might be, or don't do their full due diligence. And I know when we run searches for marketing clients, you know, when they try and cut corners, I really try and impress upon them the need to kind of follow the process and check all the boxes,
Yes.
because you're not going to necessarily end up in the best possible situation if you don't do that. So I totally agree with you. And I like the whole notion of knowing who you are, because if you don't have a good sense as to who you are, it's going to, like you said, be really hard for that agency to help you out.
Right.
So my last question, if an agency was trying to knock down your door and attempting to win business from you, what advice would you give that agency? Stop knocking down my door.
Maybe no. I really appreciate someone who comes in and has an understanding of my business when they talk to me. Now, when I say that too, I've worked before. Sometimes they'll say like, "Hey, I'm in home building, so I should work with an agency who has an experience in home building." That's not what I'm saying, because sometimes there's value in working with someone outside of my industry, because
Right.
just like I can get stuck in my box, so can they, right? So I'm not looking for someone who only has experience in home building, or I'm not saying that they have to have experience in home building, but I want to know that they took a little bit of time to understand who who
Sure.
I am and who my company is.
Right.
And I mean, that's going to be what, if you are calling me or if you are emailing me, I mean, how many calls and emails do we get every single day of people trying to solicit business? So there needs to be some differentiation. So if someone emails over and says, "Hey, I saw that you did this. I really understand how it resonated with with your customers. I think that it was a fabulous idea. I have a couple of tips for how I think it could have been like improved, and maybe not even improved. I just want to understand that I'm not just a number or a client
Yeah.
they're calling, that they did a little bit of homework and they truly connected with who we are as a business, and they think we're going to make a good team, because that's the one thing I stress to my agency and really any of the different vendors that I work with. I don't want to work with a vendor. I want to work with another team member where they understand
Right.
if I succeed, they're succeeding too. If I fail, they're failing too. Like, where they're invested in it. I'm not just a paying client. I'm one of their team members. And that is how most of my relationships are. And they're long-term relationships, and I value them. There's a loyalty there. There's a trust there. So actually that's what I'm looking for, is that sort of, we're going to make a good team. So I need to know
Yeah.
that you did your due diligence and you're looking to be my team member. You're not looking just to get another client.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I sometimes characterize it as making people like you feel like I'm not trying to win your business, but I'm there to be helpful and
Yes.
thoughtful and help you move your business forward, but not necessarily win it. That's going to put an agency, I think, in a different place. Um, with you on the receiving end of that phone call than somebody just pounding down the door and trying to talk about how great they are. So I think that's great, great counsel. So.
No, Mark, and I agree with you, because I've had people who've done just that. When you can say, "Hey, I'm here to you as a resource. Call me." Like, even if you don't go with me, but you want to run this by me, give me a
Sure.
call, because I know more about it than you do. I've had business that started that way, because it's just
That's
that's a lot for someone to say, "Hey, I'm going to give you my time, even though you're not going to guarantee me any business."
right.
But by
Yeah.
the way I do business is, if you're going to give me that time, like, I especially if it's moving in the right direction, I want to give you that business. Like,
Sure.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
that you kind of, trusted me enough to do that. So, like, yeah, let's talk about that. So, absolutely.
Cool. That's great. Well, Melissa, this has been great. Really appreciate you making the time. I know we both had scheduling things that kind of push us back a bit, but I'm thrilled that we were able to spend the half an hour together that we did. You work in a very interesting category. It's got a lot of dimension to it, and it's very functional and it's very emotional, and it's changed dramatically, both in terms of the offering and how you're marketing it. So it's all very cool, and you've given us some good perspective. And happy to hear that you came off of IBS with people generally feeling pretty good about the economy. So
Yes, no,
hopefully,
that was great.
hopefully that plays out through the balance of the year. But
Absolutely.
yeah, thanks again, and yeah, wish you all the best, and hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It was great talking.